one shared language, where the whole world is connected and is able to communicate without a problem. Think about how easy life would be to no longer have a language barrier separating us all. Spanish is one of the easiest languages to learn, so it makes sense that if we want to all share a language, we should pick the one that's less challenging for everyone. If we make a point to understand each other, within 3 generations, everyone could be speaking Spanish. Programs where Spanish is taught as a second language, kindergarten through 12th grade, have existed, but the program needs to be expanded. Spanish should be a required class, kindergarten through 12th grade, because it's easier for young children to learn a foreign language, it's becoming harder to communicate with others, and it will give people more opportunities. Let's start with the fact that it's easier for young children to learn a new language than it is for adults. One of the more famous discoveries was that children go through critical stages when they are particularly receptive to learning different forms of information. Bunnell states in an article that babies and young infants can pick up new words and sounds effortlessly during the critical period of cortex development. If students are required to take Spanish at a younger age, it is more likely that they will be fluent in the language by the time they graduate. Because once adolescence begins, it becomes extremely difficult to learn a new language. Your brain is trained not to pay attention to foreign sounds during adolescence, which is what makes it so difficult. However, some people might argue that students are allowed to take Spanish in high school or college, but as I have stated, by that point in time, it's too late to truly become fluent in that language. By the time the student reaches 30, they might have retained enough information to be able to order food at a restaurant in Spanish, but they would not be able to carry on a conversation with someone who only spoke that language. America is one of the few countries that does not have mandatory foreign language classes in schools, while in countries like Ecuador, they start teaching English as soon as kindergarten. I went to a high school where students could choose a foreign language and had to take it for at least 2 years. The language I chose, like many others, was Spanish, and even though I took it for 3 years and have been to Spanish-speaking countries on multiple occasions, I could not have a conversation with someone who only spoke Spanish for longer than probably 2 minutes. This is a huge disadvantage while trying to learn about someone's culture. And I believe that if I had had the opportunity to take Spanish at a younger age, I would be able to communicate better. By the time the opportunity presented itself, my cortex was developed and there was little room to add a foreign language. America is falling behind in many academic fields, but foreign language does not have to be one of them. Also, Spanish is a lot easier to learn and write. If you know how a word is spelled, you can almost always know how it's pronounced. It also is the world's second most common language. A foreign language is part of a well-rounded education, and it helps to strengthen a specific part of the brain. Learning another language helps students to understand their own language more deeply because it increases awareness of grammar and sentence structure. The ability to converse in another language expands the horizons and opportunities of students, enabling them to interact with more people in the world in more meaningful ways. Sadly, it has become harder and harder to communicate with people in recent years. The language barrier has rapidly been expanding. The U.S. Census estimates that there are around 50.5 million Hispanic people living in America and another 3.7 million who are Puerto Rican. This number represents a 43% increase in the recorded Hispanic population from 2000 to 2010, at a rate of 4 times faster than the rest of the U.S. population. 2 out of every 3 people speak a language other than English in their household. And demographers say, get used to it, because the influx of immigrants who do not speak English will escalate in coming years because of growing political and economic instability abroad. If citizens do not take action, soon there will be an even larger speaking barrier. As the Hispanic population continues to grow at an outrageous rate, it becomes more and more likely that you will marry into a Spanish-speaking family, have Spanish-speaking neighbors, or encounter Spanish-speaking people in your daily routines. Today, nearly all areas of the U.S. have some sort of Hispanic population. People will not be able to avoid the issue at hand. Spanish is growing it, and instead of fighting it, we need to accept it and join. If Spanish programs are pushed kindergarten through 12th grade, we would be one step closer to getting rid of the speaking barrier altogether. There's an overwhelming number of studies and successful models around the world that provide evidence that early foreign language instruction is the way to go. In Europe, children learn 2 to 3 languages starting at early ages, and develop along the way cognitive skills beyond their linguistic abilities. Unfortunately, with this short-minded mentality that English is the only language in the world, we are lacking because we are failing children by not providing them with the tools they require to assume roles in society. The U.S. has an important opportunity to adopt some of the Hispanic culture into the American way of life. Most Americans have this attitude that everyone else speaks English, so why should we bother learning a foreign language when it's pointless? However, learning Spanish is not pointless because it can be used to connect with our Hispanic neighbors. America is a melting pot, and there is room for a second language. Knowing Spanish also provides a huge advantage and opportunities in life, such as travel and job opportunities. When people travel to other places like Spain and South America and are able to speak the native language, they are able to learn so much more about the culture and history of the country. Knowing Spanish also gives people the option of learning more languages, because once you can speak Spanish, you will have a head start on learning the other Latin-based languages such as French and Italian. One of the biggest advantages, though, in being fluent in Spanish is job opportunities. If two people apply for a job, almost always the candidate who is bilingual will receive the job because of the increasing numbers of Hispanics in the area. To wrap it all up, Spanish should be a requirement for students kindergarten through 12th grade. If students are taught Spanish throughout their learning stages of their life, by the time they reach adulthood, they would be fluent in the language, which would then lead to the distinction of a language barrier between Caucasians and Hispanic, and better communication in the community. Being fluent in Spanish will also lead to advantages for future generations, especially when it comes to job opportunities. Spanish programming needs to be pushed in schools so that the future will have a better life.